You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday, the 4th of February. UK accuses Argentina of becoming fanatical over Falklands. Girls in East Lancashire take part in World Hijab Day. Conservative councillor suspended for alleged racism against Muslims. François Hollande to remove word race from French constitution. Muslim leaders in Norway state that Jewish-run media ruins Muslims' reputations. Saudi preacher gets off light for raping and killing his daughter. Mark Levine explodes, the Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated our government. Mainstream media error or something more sinister. Thought for the day, I am in orbit yet again. And finally, that was a king, that was. UK news. The UK accuses Argentina of becoming fanatical over the Falklands. Britain accused Argentina of becoming fanatical about its demands for the Falklands last week after the country's foreign minister refused to meet islanders. Foreign Secretary William Hague invited counterpart Hector Timerman to a meeting when he visits London this week to discuss issues relating to the islands. But Mr Hague was snubbed on the grounds that members of the Falkland Islands government, which Buenos Aires refuses to recognise, would also be present. At the same time, Timerman told his local C5N channel that a planned referendum that would let Malvinas Islanders decide whether to remain under British protection is illegal. The referendum, set to take place on March the 11th and 12th, is illegal because that is what the United Nations decreed when it said islanders do not have the right to self-determination since they are a transplanted community. A World at 8 reporter states, well, if it was down to transplanted communities, where does that put the Minister and the Prime Minister, as they are of German extraction? The islanders have lived on the Falklands for much longer than the Germans have lived in Argentina. Girls in East Lancashire take part in World Hijab Day. Girls of all faiths across East Lancashire have been taking part in World Hijab Day to understand and appreciate the Muslim culture. Female staff and pupils at Pleckgate High School wore the traditional headscarf yesterday to better understand the garment and its meaning. A religious studies group from Nelson and Colne College also took part in the Awareness Day. Shahiesta Raja, head of RE and citizenship at Pleckgate High School, said, staff and pupils, Muslim and non-Muslim, wore the hijab all day as a way of increasing understanding and promoting the spiritual, moral, cultural and social awareness of our pupils. Shahiesta, who started wearing a hijab full-time 2 years ago, heard about the annual event through Facebook. She said, a lot of the girls at the school already wear a hijab and we have one as part of the school uniform. I asked the head if we could ask all the girls to take part and around a third did. We also had a number of staff take part. I think World Hijab Day helps us to understand how Muslim women feel and more about their beliefs and faith. A lot of the girls were getting excited about taking part and many saw it as a fashionable thing and quite light-hearted, while it still got the message across. Amir Saeed, Student and Community Development Officer at Nelson and Colne College, said, I'm glad the college has been involved and hopefully next year we'll do it on a bigger scale and get everyone involved. A World at 8 reporter commented, I give up. Only in England can we be so stupid. Of course young girls will flock to be seen to be different or cool and wear this symbol of repression. I went to a convent and I had to wear a veil every morning at Mass and I loved it. It was black and lacy and made me feel good. However, I was neither a Catholic nor Spanish, so when I left that school, I left it behind. The message from this farce is one of conversion, not understanding, and few of these youngsters will really catch on to this. The staff should know better, or alternatively have a wear a cross day for all, which could lead to a better understanding of this country's main religion. Conservative councillor suspended for alleged racism against Muslims. Chris Joannides, a councillor in Enfield, North London, has been suspended and is under investigation after allegedly making anti-Muslim comments and sectarian remarks on a social media website, The Guardian has learned. Chris Joannides' Facebook page contained material comparing Muslim women who wear the burqa to rubbish bags. Another post included sexual remarks in a discussion about a flasher and a comment that his work as a councillor was getting in the way of his social life. This presenter says, "I've been calling them Dagenham dustbins for years. I thought that was their title." British Muslims honoured at celebration event. British Muslims who have made a significant contribution to UK society were honoured during a celebration evening in Manchester this week. Winners of the first National British Muslim Awards 2013, which were held in the Sheridan Suite, included Olympic hero Mo Farah, former Dragon's Den star James Caan and Nazir Afzal, the North West head of the Crown Prosecution Service. The event honoured the success and achievements of Britain's Muslim individuals, groups and business people and highlighted the significant role Muslims play in contributing to a better Great Britain. A World Hijab spokesperson commented, but his remarks are unprintable and unspeakable. Former Slough Lord Mayor in court over 2 illegal workers in her sweet shop. Former Lord Mayor of Slough, Sukhajit Dhaliwal, is in court facing a fine of up to £20,000 after border agency officials raided her sweet shop and arrested 2 illegal immigrants. The British public, who have had enough of immigration, informed authorities after they found that the pair could not speak English. A woman of 26 and a man of 33 were said to have sneaked into Britain from India to be employed by the Asian former Lord Mayor at her Maharaja sweet shop. A spokesperson supporting the British Jobs for British Workers commented, "Here we have a so-called British Lord Mayor employing cheap illegal workers, putting British people out of work and putting British families in misery during the worst recession since the 1930s. But if you notice, migrants rarely employ Brits in their shops or their restaurants." European news. Hollande to remove race from French constitution. François Hollande is to have the word race removed from the French constitution's guarantee that all citizens will be treated equally. The French president declared, "There is no place for race in the Republic" in March last year while campaigning against his predecessor, Nicolas Sarkozy. Mr Hollande's election commitment will be honoured before the summer, aides told Le Figaro on Friday, as part of a wider programme of constitutional reform. Leading Norwegian Muslims blamed Jewish influence. 2 leading Norwegian Muslims blamed Jewish influence for Christian hostility to Muslims. Mehmet Ali Shah, the imam at Norway's largest mosque, and Gulam Sarwar, the mosque's chairman, told the daily Sagsavisen that the fear Jews instilled in others explained fraught Muslim-Jewish relations as well as the Holocaust. Jewish influence caused Norwegians to have a negative view of Islam, the men said in an interview at Oslo's Jamaat al-Salat Mosque, which has over 5,000 members. "People are ignorant because they get their information from the media, and the media only write negatively about Islam," said Ali Shah. "Judaism has a better grip on the media," he added. "The Jews control the media, and that's detrimental." Sawa, agreeing, referred to The Innocence of Muslims, an anti-Muslim film produced by an Egyptian-American Christian Copt. A handful of people without means were behind the movie about Muhammad in the US. So who was financing them, he said. "Jewish-Muslim relations have never been good," Sawa said. A World Hijab spokesperson commented, "The Muslims do not need anyone to defame them. Their activities defame themselves." Extreme right radicals seeking more visible presence in Finland. A report issued by the Finnish Security Intelligence Service, SUPO, last August highlighted the threat of anti-jihadism. This is an ultra-rightist view which claims Islam poses a threat to Europe and that the power elite are responsible for immigration and problems linked to it. Anti-jihadists believe democratic means can no longer solve the problem. SUPO's report concentrated on the violent actions of Anders Behring Breivik in Norway and considered whether Finnish extremists could perpetrate similar terrorist attacks. The report concluded that they could. Breivik should not be considered as a crazy lone wolf. He probably carried out his deadly attacks by himself, but he was not alone with his ideological views, writes SUPO researcher Mario Peso in the report. World news. Saudi preacher gets off light for raping and killing daughter. Warning, this does have extremely disturbing content. A Saudi preacher who raped his 5-year-old daughter and tortured her to death has been sentenced to pay blood money to the mother after having served a short jail term, activists said on Saturday. Lamia Al-Ghamdi was admitted to hospital on December the 25th, 2011 with multiple injuries, including a crushed skull, broken ribs and left arm, extensive bruising and burns. She died last October the 22nd. According to the victim's mother, hospital staff told her that her child's rectum had been torn open and the abuser had attempted to burn it closed. Mark Levine explodes that the Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated our government. It's called Barack Obama. On his radio show last night, Mark Levine went off on President Obama's decision to send F-16 planes and tanks to assist President Mohamed Morsi's Egyptian government, calling the president a Muslim Brotherhood sympathiser. "What the hell is happening?" he said. "Now we back the Muslim Brotherhood?" Levine said of the administration's decision to aid Morsi. Muslims feel targeted after Philadelphia school kidnapping. The Muslim community in West Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, held a meeting venting frustrations over people committing crimes dressed in traditional Muslim garb. "We have a right to wear a face veil if we choose to, that's our right, our God-given right," said Aliyah Walker. Muslim women in West Philadelphia are becoming increasingly fearful. This, as the pressure mounts for the capture of a woman dressed in Muslim garb and her accomplice, who kidnapped a 5-year-old girl from her classroom and brutally assaulted her. A nationalist spokesperson said, "If the cap fits, wear it." Scientists warn of hijacking risk to Pakistan nukes. Increasing radicalisation within Pakistani's military could lead to its nuclear weapons being hijacked by radical Islamists, a Pakistani scientist has warned. Safety and security of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal is of a major concern. The growing radicalisation within the military, giving attacks on its own internal bases, could lead to these nuclear weapons being hijacked by radical Islamists, said Pervez Hoodboy, who was here for the London launch of his book, Confronting the Bomb. The nuclear physicist and defence analyst estimated Pakistan's arsenal to be similar to India's at around 120 to 130 warheads. Mainstream media error or something more sinister. Last week we reported that hacked emails reveal Washington-approved plan for chemical weapons attack in Syria. The emails give the indication that Western governments with Qatari support were planning to unleash a chemical weapons attack and blame it on Syria's government. Britham Defence Limited, the target of the cyber attack, has told the Voice of Russia that their web servers overseas were attacked and the emails were planted by an unknown third party. Shortly after reports of the leak began circulating on the web, US Defence Secretary Leon Panetta appeared on CBS News and backed off claims of Syrian chemical weapons, saying, "We haven't seen anything new indicating any aggressive steps to move forward in that way." Mysteriously, the news report from the Daily Mail Online has disappeared, and yetnews.com, an Israeli site, reports that the Sunday Times has said Scotland Yard is investigating. Net News goes on to speculate Iranian involvement and the involvement of a network of pro-Assad hackers and activists calling themselves the Syrian Electronic Army. Fact or fantasy? Whose facts and whose fantasies? The incident certainly is not being reported in the mainstream Western media. It is this lack of reporting that draws our attention and leads to speculation that something is rotten in Denmark. Oops, that is London and Washington. Thought for the day. Today I am launched like Apollo. When I heard on the news last week that local councils are going to actually take back extra bedrooms in their latest rules, I virtually took off in orbit. Of course, this practice of taking back or stopping certain benefits has been going on for some time, and I do have it on good record that a member of our party based in the South East region has had £40 taken off his housing allowance for a spare space, and his carer's allowance has been stopped dead, despite filling in a virtual library of booklets when requested. He cares for his wife who has MS and on some days can't do his job because he has to stay home. When he asked his local council what could he do, they told him what they probably tell the immigrants: stop work, give up your company and go on to benefits. Put this with the disgusting headlines in the Mail today on us handing migrants £1 million a week for their brats who aren't here, and my orbital stance did a U-turn and came down to earth with a bang. Now, are we paying for the fact that these people have not brought their children over to partake in free education, healthcare and further education? Are we that grateful as a nation? If you read the stats on this one, it makes one sick. The Poles head the cast in this shameful debacle of waste of money, and this country cannot afford it. We're cutting back on everything, on every council and throughout government, and yet here we are paying huge amounts of money each month for kids who aren't here and hopefully do not come over as their parents have. Why are we paying them money at all? Of course, put it all down to the EU and our stupid government. If we didn't pay anyone at all, even immigrants who had children over here, what would the EU do about it? It would take years to get through the courts, and by that time their parents will have saved or sent back enough money to go back home and leave that awful, terrible gap of workers that we're told consistently we need all the time. It costs taxpayers £55 million a year to fund this wastage, which could be spent on bringing better education facilities to our own children and giving more to our elderly, to say nothing of paying off a goodly portion of the national debt. I really don't give a flying rat's arse if Polish parents only get £5 a week in Poland. Things are cheaper in Poland. However, if the begetters of these expensive progeny are inhabiting British space, they get £20 for the first child and £13 for extras, even though the kids are not with them. Why do we Brits pay money if the kids are not over here getting it? Words fail me. Actually, I'm still in orbit. Now, the bedroom tax. With Polish, the second language of our country now, and Mohammed, the first choice in infants' names, you can guess who will not be very upset by the newest set of bloomers by our leaders, can't you? Well, for the misinformed, it will not apply to most of our immigrant come-latelys. I've also been informed that near my SE informant's house there is a two-bedroomed house occupied by an Asian, and he uses both those bedrooms just as a storage space for his business stock. Now, will he be subject to the April bedroom tax? Will he be told to vacate or pay back his benefits to cover 2 spare rooms? Will he be told to give that storage space over to more deserving families? Nope. Now you're getting the picture of just how unfair this ruling will be. Rather like the window tax of old, which brought down a government and a king, this one could do the same. Now, I'm not an overly sentimental person, but what I saw on that news was truly sad. There was Bill and Lisa, a couple who had a 2-bedroom house in Essex. Lisa has cerebral palsy and Bill is her full-time carer. They have a second bedroom, which the council say is spare, and will cost them £80 a month from April. Lisa's illness makes her muscles contract and spasm at night, and Bill has to use a spare room on most nights. But if he stays in with Lisa, it's okay. Now, I don't see this at all. If Bill is using the spare room, it is being used, so it's not spare, and for very good reason. Another single father, Alex, has 2 children to stay most weekends in a 2-bedroom flat in Glasgow. The council class his daughter Rihanna's room as spare, and it'll cost him £40 a month. Now, either I'm stupid or this new ruling is, because if a room is occupied more than a certain number of nights a year, how can it be spare? Rihanna cannot sleep with her 3-year-old brother or her father, so it ain't spare. But even more gut-wrenching is the fact that this law will apply after this coming April, and it will have far-reaching effects on the ordinary and disabled in our communities. Already we have the usually white elderly in our society being forced, through lack of proper financial help, to sell their homes or, in a council accommodation, forced into small 1-room flats, so that newcomers at the top of the council housing lists can occupy their nice 3 or 4 bedroom homes with all their accompanying brats. Whether one is a nationalist or not, this course of events is not healthy for the population of this country. If they can put a tax on your homes or what is within your homes if you are a council tenant, then there is no preventative measure in place to protect you from future encroachments on your lives. The reporter on the bedroom tax was Asian, and although she sounded fairly sympathetic, this new edict of course will not apply to her or her kith and kin. And why, do you ask yourself, are the local yokels on the council doing it this way? Because in most immigrant households all the bedrooms are used, and in fact some even use garden sheds or put up tents, as one Filipino family did on our estate before they were chucked out or went somewhere else bigger. That was a 2-bedroomed house, and when they moved out, over 10 beds were carried up the back to the vans and the tent was removed in the garden. Now, nobody minds rules. We need rules and laws. But these rules and laws should be applied, if fair, to all peoples, not just the indigenous and poor people of a country. It is simply not fair. As my husband's father used to say, a black man's behind's never fair, although in this case it does seem to apply. We should not pay out unnecessary money, even if we are still in the EU, to peoples not in this country. And indeed, I would stop all benefit payments to immigrants unless they'd been working many years in this country to support themselves. I would not allow the councils to operate this bedroom tax, and I would look very closely into the correlation of carers in certain communities and the comparisons thereof. Orbit done on first angry making round. My second one is not that angry making, just wonder where the stupids went. The authorities are now wondering why HIV and AIDS seem to be on the increase in the gay and bisexual communities. Well, could it be that for the last 10 years, over which the said infection rate has not lessened, that we as a society have been pushing the gay alternative lifestyle to all and sundry? Indeed, promoting it as almost as a preferential lifestyle to our youngsters. We encourage them to marry and adopt children, enter the clergy, not literally I hope, and more. We and Western society have adopted these people and made them into celebrities and people to be admired. Now, before you yell homophobe, I will say that personally I couldn't care less who does what to whom, where, when or how much. I think that the old days of making the act itself illegal was bad. But we've run the gamut of it all now, and there seems to be no limit for so-called gay men mincing around holding hands, and that's just on TV. The middle-of-the-road approach is best, I feel, and a lot of dignity needs to be acquired now that coming out and airing and finding oneself is all over. Well, at least it should be over after looking at the stats on disease for that section of society. Each week, 7 gay or bisexual men get affected. In the 80s, advertising targeted this section of men, and the resulting effect was that at least everyone knew what was happening. For the last 10 years, no one has really targeted these gay men because it was thought of as targeting them for the wrong reason or just targeting homos, and we started to target the heterosexual section of society and the over 50s. Never mind, of course, the infected from the African subcontinent and Eastern Europe coming over here, riddled with it, and getting millions of pounds worth of HIV treatment on the international HS. So now they, the medical authorities, are going to have to target gay and bisexual men again and bring awareness where they had sought to stifle just that in the last few years. In the last 10 years, 2,500 gay men have contracted the disease and all cost the state large amounts of money. One bloke blamed the lack of advertising on unprotected sex amongst gay men. Oh really? Do you need a diploma to use a condom? HIV and AIDS has not gone away. It's just the brains and attitude of us Brits that seem to have gone south. We must bring back the advertisements and use of condoms, as we are acquiring a lot of gay and bisexual men who probably cannot understand old-fashioned English as it is spoke. Use a condom or just say no. And finally, that was a king, that was. The skeleton found beneath a car park in Leicester does belong to Richard III, who was slain at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. Scientists confirmed today. Archaeologists said DNA testing proved beyond all reasonable doubt that the skeleton was that of the last Plantagenet king. The University of Leicester team described their find as truly astonishing, and it is the academic conclusion of the University of Leicester that, beyond reasonable doubt, the individual exhumed at Greyfriars is indeed Richard III, the last Plantagenet king of England, said Richard Buckley, who led the research. The way they found the skeleton suggested the king had been tied when he was buried. There's been extensive damage to the bones, scientists say. The skeleton had an unusually slender, almost feminine build for a man and was aged between the late 20s and early 30s. Richard died aged 32. Without the spinal abnormality, the skeleton would have been 5'8", which was above average height for a medieval man, scientists say. The injuries suggest the king may have lost his helmet during the battle, which saw him deposed by Henry VII, the first Welsh Tudor king. The skeleton was uncovered last autumn amid the historic foundations of a Franciscan friary in Leicester, beneath a council car park which is overlooked by Leicester Cathedral. They will be reinterred early next year at the cathedral, with a visitor centre to be created nearby, which will tell the king's story. This presenter says, "I've always had a lot of time for Richard III, who suffered from bad publicity. At last his bones can rest in an appropriate place and he can assume his place in history." You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.